So good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming in today. And for those of us that are joining us online, thanks for being on our Teams call. My name is James Holden. I'm the field manager for the Hassayampa Field Office. The Agua Fria National Monument is inside the Hassayampa Field Office, and I used to manage that too. So what we're doing today is we're kicking off the 25th anniversary of the Agua Fria National Monument. What we're going to be doing throughout this year is a series of talks online and in person, and then also some field tours. Those will be announced as we get them scheduled throughout the year. And I'm looking forward to some really good participation throughout the year on these events, celebrating this really neat national monument right outside of Phoenix. For today, we have a couple presentations lined up for you guys. I would ask the room mics in here are extremely sensitive. If you want to have side conversations, please step outside because you'll hear a pin drop on these mics. So we want to make sure that the people online can hear everything that's being said and can see the presentation as well. Logistics for in this room. Exits, if the building catches on fire for some reason and the lights go off, the doors are right out there, right behind you. And then bathrooms are going to be in the front office that you guys came in through. There's a bathroom up there for use. If there's no questions right now for me, I'm going to turn it over to Connie Stone and we can get this kicked off.
Hello, thank you everyone for attending our presentation to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Agua Fria National Monument. A few words about myself. I worked for the Bureau of Land Management for more than 20 years. Part of that time was as the archaeologist for the Agua Fria National Monument. And I was involved with that territory from the 1980s until now, when I'm involved with the Friends of the Agua Fria National Monument. Being an archaeologist by profession, I decided to organize my presentation by looking at different dates and time periods. And we'll start with January 11th, 2000. That was 25 years ago, minus one day. Tomorrow would be 25 years. On that day, President Bill Clinton declared the Agua Fria National Monument as a national monument through a presidential proclamation. It was one of only 3 at that time that were administered by the Bureau of Land Management. The first BLM administered national monument was up in Utah at Grand Staircase Escalante, which was designated in 1996. And on January 11th, 2000, President Clinton stood at the edge of the Grand Canyon and made this great announcement of 2 more national monuments in Arizona, Agua Fria, just north of us here, and the Grand Canyon Parashant National Monument, which is north of the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River. So why didn't he do this in Black Canyon City? I mean, really, it's beautiful up there, but the Grand Canyon, much more scenic place to have a grand proclamation event. Okay. So why was this area designated as a national monument? It's a special place. It has incredibly rich historical, scientific, cultural, and natural values. A very rich landscape of archaeological sites that date back a couple of thousand years before now. And they're all connected within a distinctive natural landscape of grasslands and canyons. And it's a very unique situation where it's virtually an undisturbed area. You can go out there and almost feel like you're walking into the past. It's also a rich natural landscape of grasslands and riparian areas with a diverse range of plant and animal species, including pronghorn, deer, bear, and native fish. It's also a very important traditional area for many Native American tribes, ranging from the Hopi, who are now way up in northeastern Arizona, but their ancestors traveled through the area, and we find pottery from the Hopi Mesas up there. And also we had the Yavapai, Apache, the Adam, who also used to be known as the Pima from the Phoenix area here. Okay, so where is this now? Here's a map. Might be a little hard to see, but to point out, the red line going through the middle is Interstate 17. Okay. At the south end, you have Black Canyon City. And the north end, well, blue is that state land up there, that's Cordis Junction. The National Monument is all of the yellow territory that is east of Interstate 17. Okay. It includes big flat area to the east is Perry Mesa. And cutting through the middle, you have the Agua Fria River, which goes through a very deep canyon. And the Mesa area to the west of the Agua Fria River is Black Mesa. I'm talking about, okay, there you have the river, Perry Mesa, Black Mesa. Okay, now Perry Mesa, it's a large flat grassland plateau. The green is the Tonto National Forest. Okay. And the line, that boundary is, it's an artificial government boundary. There were talks about including the Perry Mesa area on the Tonto National Forest within the National Monument, but there were two government departments involved, Interior and Agriculture, and that was just too bureaucratically complex. So the Tonto Forest part of Perry Mesa was left out of the monument, but the BLM and the forest had a long history of cooperation out there. Okay, so why and how did the Perry Mesa area become a national monument? Okay, now here's some examples of the landscape. Okay, we have mesas. That's the Agua Fria River Canyon, and believe it or not, sometimes there is water in the canyon. Not in this photo. And the mesas are cut by several very deep canyons. It's very scenic out there, as you can see from this. This is Lousy Canyon. I think it might be named for the gnats that come out and start biting you in May and June. Another Lousy Canyon, it has springs, very lush, and it's the Bradshaw Mountains in the background there. So let's go back to about AD 1350, about 800 years ago. What we had then was what archaeologists call the Perry Mesa tradition. We had very large Pueblo towns. They were large structures built of stone masonry walls. These structures range from like 1 or 2 rooms, which are very common out there, to up to 100 rooms. Some of them occur in blocks, but there are like 7 or 8 villages that probably housed as many as several hundred people. And around 1350 or so, the estimate is that there could have been 3,000 people living up there. It appeared to be a very good time for farming, fairly wet, predictable rains and temperatures from year to year, unlike now. And so people moved up there. People had been there for a couple of thousand years at least. They have started with people who hunted and gathered, and then they started farming. And there were people related to the Hohokam culture here in the valley that they're known for their canal agriculture. But these folks farmed along the streams and rivers, and they lived in pit houses, which are structures kind of built partly into the ground, dug into the ground with a structure built above it. And so those folks lived out there for many, many hundreds or thousands of years. And then something happened around AD 1250 where several groups of people started moving up onto the mesas. They started leaving surrounding areas and concentrating into these larger and larger settlements. And so that time is what we call the Perry Mesa tradition. In the 1400s, looks like the weather got bad, farming wasn't as easy to do. There was probably less rainfall, more drought like there is now, and people started moving away. But after that, several Indian tribes like the Yavapai and Apache still continued to use the area. And around the 1880s or so, farmers and ranchers started moving in. There were sheep drives where they used to drive several thousand head of sheep from the desert up to the Flagstaff area or to the higher mountains. And there were sheep drives nearby, and some of them came through this area. Ranchers moved in, homesteaders and miners, and the Yavapai still continued to use the area to harvest agave plants. And even into the 1920s, there were some Yavapai that lived over near Cleator in the Bradshaw Mountains and near Mayer. But of course, they were pushed out and pushed onto reservations by the influx of settlers and the United States Army. So here's another view of just a snapshot of what kinds of resources we have there. This springs and plants. For a while, there were illegal marijuana farms in here even. And you have the Agua Fria River, which is, this is a shot, I think, from Badger Springs. Just a real easy hike from Badger Springs exit off I-17. And there it is with quite a bit of water. Okay. So around 1930, there was a guy named J.W. Simmons. He was an archaeologist, though not professionally trained. But he started exploring all these archaeological ruins on the mesas. And he was part of the Federal Writers Project, which was one of the Depression era programs to help keep people employed during the Great Depression. And he started studying these pueblos and really recording some remarkable architecture and artifacts and what history they represented. But then until the 1970s, there wasn't a whole lot of interest by archaeologists in this area. They were going to places like Montezuma Castle and Tuzagut, and the Agua Fria and Perry Mesa were just kind of remote and rugged and not really visited a lot by archaeologists. Okay. But when you have sites like this, you can often see these pueblos better from the air than you can from the ground. On the ground, they often look like just big mounds of rocks. But here you can see that there are many rooms, and you can see the outlines of the rooms and the walls. Many of these are right near the edges of canyons. So archaeologists started coming through in the 1970s when big power lines were being planned to be built through the area. So archaeologists from Museum of Northern Arizona studied the area. There was also a large research project by Southern Illinois University. And the Bureau of Land Management started taking note of all these archaeologists out there and what they were finding. But at that time, the BLM only managed a very small part of the mesa and just a few of these types of sites. And however, about that time, BLM was starting to hire archaeologists after several historic preservation laws had been passed in the 1960s that they had to comply with. And so some BLM employees, and I think it was a recreation specialist actually, who moved forward, and the BLM designated what territory it had on Perry Mesa as the Perry Mesa National Register District. The National Register of Historic Places is a list of sites that, according to certain criteria, they're very important in the nation's history. So we had the Perry Mesa National Register District was designated in 1974. There's more and more interest in Perry Mesa, including by the Bureau of Land Management. In the 1980s, that's when I started working here for the BLM. And it seemed like people were always going up to Perry Mesa to check out the resources, because not only were there all of these archaeological sites, but there were pronghorn herds, all kinds of wildlife, so, wildlife biologists, all the natural resources people got interested in the area also. And I remember the BLM staff, people would be traveling up to Perry Mesa all the time. You know, I got to go along on a few of those trips, and the managers would also visit. They got to helicopter in. Yeah. And so in the late 1980s, the Bureau of Land Management acquired most of Perry Mesa, most of these lands from the state of Arizona. It had been state land. And so that's why the monument, as you saw from the map, it's a nice big block of yellow Bureau of Land Management managed land. Okay. After that, I'm going to run through just some examples of what's in the National Register district and the National Monument. This is Badger Springs Pueblo. It's up above Badger Springs Wash. So yeah, on the left here, that's the room block and walls surrounding Badger Springs Pueblo. It's about 60 to 80 rooms were there. Going out from there, it's kind of a reflection there, but see this long kind of clear line? That's a feature that archaeologists call a racetrack. You know, if you've hiked up there, you know how rocky it is. It's very a volcanic landscape, very rocky, easy to turn or break an ankle. But there are these cleared areas that really show up and may have had some type of, ceremonial use. It's a little harder to see or a little more subtle. There are what look like parallel straight lines on the landscape. Those were agricultural terraces. They would build lines of rocks, to terrace areas to catch the rainfall and be able to farm that way. These are all over the place up there. It's amazing. If you take like a helicopter ride, you can see them all over. And so they had quite an agricultural landscape up there in the 1300s when they had enough rain to farm. Just amazing. They farmed corn, beans, barley, and in rock piles elsewhere, they would farm agave plants. Okay. Here's a little closer aerial view of Pueblo La Plata, which is about an 80-room site. It's not far off of Bloody Basin Road. And this is one that the Bureau of Land Management has started to do some interpretive work and kind of inviting people to go and visit Pueblo La Plata. We even have a few brochures if you want to pick one up after the presentation. Okay. So in the 1990s, after the Bureau of Land Management acquired all this land, it's like, what do you do with it? We did several projects jointly with the Tohono National Forest with the help of their archaeologist, John Scott Wood. We did a site vandalism study. Unfortunately, many of these sites had been pot hunted and walls knocked down and vandalized over the years, causing a lot of damage. We expanded the Perry Mesa National Register District to more than 50,000 acres. Okay, considering, I didn't say the monument itself is roughly 70,000 acres. And there was even a legal case where some archaeologists and para-archaeologists from the Prescott Yavapai tribe were visiting one of these sites, and they found some people vandalizing it and reported them to law enforcement, and they caught them and were successfully prosecuted. So they had to give up their trucks and they had to help build hiking trails and all kinds of creative penalties. In 1994, the BLM did a wild and scenic river study that looked at rivers on Bureau of Land Management managed land in Arizona. And that study recommended the Agua Fria River as suitable for designation due to its outstanding cultural, scenic, wildlife, and riparian values. So that official designation didn't happen, but the BLM basically had to preserve those values. So in 1999, I was working not in this office, in another BLM office, and my boss came to me and said, we want you to write all about how great the archaeological resources are out on Perry Mesa. And then they went to the wildlife biologist and asked him to write about how great all the wildlife and natural resources were out there. And we heard rumors that Washington was considering designating the Agua Fria Perry Mesa as a national monument. But, we weren't sure about that. We didn't know what was going on at the upper levels. And so my bosses said, we want you to write about the objects, the archaeological objects on the monument. And to an archaeologist, no, that is not a good word, because we don't just deal with objects and artifacts. We look at the connections between them and how they change through time. And, we do scientific research. And then I thought, no, wait a minute, objects, where'd that word come from? The Antiquities Act of 1906 allows the president to designate national monuments if they have objects of historic or scientific interest. Oh, okay, that's where that came from. So they are considering a national monument. Okay, and soon enough, Bruce Babbitt, who was the Secretary of the Interior back then, came to Arizona to check out that possibility. Babbitt had a new vision for national monuments for the Bureau of Land Management. Up to that point, most national monuments were managed by the National Park Service. And although protection of the park values was a key thing, so was tourism. Babbitt had a vision that the Bureau of Land Management could have its own lands where the primary purpose was conservation of the natural and cultural values, but where there could also be some uses that maybe you wouldn't have in national parks, like hunting and grazing. And he also thought, well, they didn't have, the BLM national monuments wouldn't need to have as much infrastructure related to tourism, roads, visitor centers. So he had already persuaded President Clinton to designate Grand Staircase Escalante up in Utah. And now his sights were set on Perry Mesa. Now, Babbitt had been governor of Arizona, and he'd hiked up on Perry Mesa, so he knew the area. Well, we arranged a field trip, though, where several people from local communities and politicians and the media could attend. And that trip was planned for a site called Pueblo Pato, which is the largest site on the BLM managed part of Perry Mesa. And of course, the night before the trip, it rained. And when it rains up there, if you've been up there after rain, it's like clay mud. You cannot get anywhere. It's really awful. And there's also another thing that whenever you plan a big event up there, it's going to rain. Yeah. Somehow they know it's going to happen. So that happened. And we had to switch the hike to Baby Canyon Pueblo, which is a site that isn't far off of Bloody Basin Road, which made it easier to drive there. But to get there, you have to hike from there down into a deep canyon and then up the other side. Yeah. But we did that, and Babbitt, he led the way. He's like a mountain goat. But the politicians and media people who were along, it was kind of funny because they were wearing loafers instead of hiking boots. And it was pretty humorous. But no, we didn't have to call in rescue helicopters or anything. So what happened was Babbitt convinced President Clinton that this would be a good new national monument, and it was designated on January 11th, 2000. Okay. Now, after 2000, I'm going to run through. Here's what the pueblos look like on the ground. Okay. And Pueblo La Plata, as I said, you can visit this site. And on the Friends of the Agua Fria National Monument website, we have a tour. We have a video tour that was done by Scott Wood. Another aerial view. This is where we hiked with Bruce Babbitt, Baby Canyon Pueblo. And later we had a volunteer project where we recorded all of the petroglyphs there, which is interesting. And here's some petroglyphs. That's the Agua Fria River Canyon. This is the prehistoric rock art that's packed into the boulders. Pato is Spanish for duck, so it's named after this duck petroglyph. But there are a whole lot of duck petroglyphs there. We have a lot of figures with big hands and feet. There was a gentleman who did some research, Cliff Hursted. He lived at Arcasanti, and he thought that this particular petroglyph boulder was a map of all the major sites on Perry Mesa, and it's an interesting concept. The big sites were all about a day's walk apart, and they had communities where people probably interacted and traded, and it was a whole social network situation. Okay. And the small structure is not as easily seen, but if you see a pile of rocks on the ground, chances are it's a small structure. It might have been that people who lived in the larger sites possibly moved out near their farms and inhabited these during certain seasons. You find these they ground corn and a lot of other substances. So sometimes you'll find what we call the bedrock matades. That could be a mono of the grinding stone that was in there. And here's a good, that's the same racetrack at Badger Springs, Pueblo. And that is the Agua Fria River Canyon in the background, and then Perry Mesa further in the background. I want to talk about the designation as a national monument. Really was a great thing. It led to a lot of protective activities and scientific research out there. Because in a national monument, the focus is on protecting those national monument values and studying them through research and also enhancing public education. Okay, so after 2000, the Bureau of Land Management prepared a management plan, which I'm sure you can find online. Staff were hired just for the monument, so including a manager, a wildlife biologist, a range person, a park ranger who could, keep an eye day by day on the area. And then I got to be the first archaeologist, and that was the best part of my career, was working out there. We established partnerships and did several research projects. Archaeological site recording by Museum of Northern Arizona. Arizona State University had a project called Legacies on the Landscape. Dr. David Wilcox from MNA conducted a lot of research, recording sites up there. And sometimes Dr. Wilcox and ASU had conflicting opinions about what was going on, but to me, that is great. That shows science in action, where you're testing one thing against another. Okay. The Desert Botanical Garden helped us study agave. It was a very important resource for people as a food resource and also fiber. And we believe, the people, prehistoric people cultivated it out there. The Audubon Society was also involved in surveying bird populations and actually established the Agua Fria as an important bird area. And I could probably say a lot more about the wildlife. It's not my specialty, but biologists started reintroducing native fish into places like Lousy Canyon and some of the creeks up there. I think there were 4 different species. They'd even have to helicopter them in sometimes. The Arizona Site Steward Program is volunteers who watch over archaeological sites. We did an interpretive plan for Pueblo La Plata. Okay. A graduate student from Arizona State University studied these racetrack features here and found 50 or so of them, I think, all over the mesa. Some of them are easier to see than others. And then we had several volunteer groups from ASU, the Deer Valley, it was the Rock Art Center there, and the Petroglyph Preserve. Arizona Archaeological Society, and the Friends of the Agua Fria National Monument. We recorded many archaeological sites, especially a lot of the rock art sites, which are, everybody loves to record those. They're fun to work at. And this is a sign. If you see signs out here, the Arizona Site Steward Program, it's a statewide program of volunteers who go out and monitor sites, keep an eye on them, and report any damage. Okay. And here is some rock art recording going on. In 2011, the Friends of the Agua Fria National Monument, which was established, we're a support group that was established just a few years after the monument was designated. And we're here to support the BLM in public education and protection of the resources. And in 2011, sponsored a symposium and published a volume about the archaeology of the Agua Fria National Monument. And there's a volunteer recording some of the bedrock matades, like after a rain. And I could go on and on, but how am I doing for time? Oh, great. Okay, just my time limit is there. And what we're going to have, Mike Hoogendyk, my co-speaker, he is like, I call him the Ansel Adams of the Agua Fria National Monument. He's a great photographer, and he'll be able to show you more of the natural and cultural resources here. And then I think after we're both finished, we can take some questions. Thank you very much.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Mike Hoogendyk. Unlike Connie, who is fact-based and give you facts and figures and events and everything for the past 40, 50 years up on the Agua Fria National Monument, I'm visually based. Okay? I like to hike, to take photographs. So again, some of our stuff is going to overlap. For example, here we have a photo that I could use to describe this place. You look. Pausing for technical. So if you look on this photograph here, on the far side, there's a little hill. That's Joe's Hill. It's an extinct volcano, 63 million years ago. It's a shield volcano. Off to the left there are the New River Mountains. To the center of the picture here, there's that dark line. That's the Agua Fria River Canyon. And it's separated by, it separates Perry Mesa on the east, Black Mesa on the west, and Black Mesa is where I-17 and Sunset Point rest stop are. Then all these granite hills are in the northwest part of the monument. You know, there was a lot of mining and stuff in those areas too. She showed you a picture similar to this. There's a lot of canyons flowing through this monument. This shows a hilltop fort right in the middle of this one canyon. It's also Lousy Canyon. And then beyond it, beyond the Agua Fria River Canyon here, is Black Mesa. Somehow that thing keeps turning on and I'm going back to it. But the south end of the monument is where Point Extreme is. We can work from here. Anyway, if you go to the south end of the monument, there's a place called Point Extreme. Okay. Really, really difficult to get down to. You need high clearance, you need four-wheel drive in a few places. It did it again. I don't know why. You think it's on timing?
Yes. Let me see if I can get it off real quick. Should behave better.
So anyway, here, this again is a view from Point Extreme. Looking down at that little pinnacle peak, which is just north of Black Canyon City, and of course, Black Canyon City is just beyond it. And then all over the monument, there's lots of cactus and spines. You have to dress accordingly. I wear double canvas front car hat, I can't even say it, but Carhartt pants when I'm out there. And you can still end up getting cactus spines in you. As Connie mentioned, the roads turn to mud. Okay, if you see storms coming, you need to get out of there. You know, a lot of reasons. There can be lightning, there can be muddy roads, there can be washes filled up. So I took this photo one day when I was headed out of the monument, going relatively fast. I went around the corner. This is not the same. This is a Gila monster, obviously, but I went around the corner during that ride out. And as it was starting to sprinkle, I saw a Gila monster in the middle of the road, and he had his head reared back and he had his mouth open and he was catching rain. And I thought, I didn't know they did that, but that's very logical. And they are one of the prettiest animals out there on the monument. There are also blackbeards. Now, I've been out there 350 some times. And I've seen one black bear, and this is him. Okay. Used to be a lot of pronghorn out there, not so much today, but this was a pronghorn release. Arizona Game and Fish came down and released 40 of them, 20 of them up by Dugas, 20 of them down off of FR-14. And I got to watch both releases. Several of these had collars on with radio, so forth. And we immediately ran over to the fence and off of Tonto National Forest and into the monument. Javelinas, a lot of them up there. These were some of the first ones I ever met face to face. And they had little babies and they had the big black mama. They had a couple little smaller black ones. But you can see the hair standing up the back of this one. She's huffing and puffing and snorting and the whole bit. So I told them, relax, folks. I'm leaving. I'm going to go that way. And I turned around, walked away, and they, left me alone. You hear more about rattlesnakes than you actually see them. Okay. This one, I got a really nice picture with his tongue out. I've almost stepped on him a couple times. I had one come out and sit down while I was eating lunch. He sat down about 4 feet to my left and started sunning himself. I offered him part of my peanut butter sandwich. He didn't want it. I finished my lunch, got up and left. I stepped on a boulder one day and this guy jumped out from underneath. He sat there bobbing up and down like he was really perturbed that I had the call to sit on his house. Again, I left him and walked away and he was just fine. She mentioned sheep drives. I wanted to take a picture of a sheep drive. Start at Badger Springs and go north. Okay. And I kept every year wanting to go up there finally one day. The archaeologist told me, she said, they're up there right now. An hour later, I was up there taking pictures. So archaeologists have what they call features. These are things that can't be moved, okay? Pueblos, the field houses, racetracks, terrace, so forth. All those things are features. So this is a different view of the same pueblo that she showed you before, where Bruce Babbitt went. This is a field house, a little round circle of stone in the foreground. My Jeep sitting off there in the distance on the road. This is a drawing of that same field house done from a drone photo that I took before they outlawed drone. You can see the circular pattern to it. And she mentioned terraces. All those horizontal lines of rocks are terraces. And one of my hiking buddies is out there on the left. And she mentioned rock piles. Okay, they are everywhere. Okay, supposedly, as I think she mentioned, they might have been used to root agave pups, honey plants, get them rooted. Once they're rooted, then these rocks protect the water in the soil while they're being rooted, and then you can take them out, move them out into the field someplace and plant them. I mentioned racetracks. This is a view from the center of one of the open areas next to the pueblo, looking down a racetrack. And it's really well seen from the ground. Most of the time you cannot see them on the ground. Typically, they're going to be 60 to 150 feet almost, maybe longer. They are 10 feet wide, 6 to 8 meters, somewhere in there. They're much longer than they are wide. She mentioned bedrock metates. Here's another group of them, and you see there's like 6 or 7 of them here, and the one up on the top has what might be a mono in it. You never can tell, because a lot of people will come and find a neat looking rock and put it in there, thinking maybe that's where it belonged. Here's 3 more. I used to take a large format camera up with a tripod, and these 3 have a circular petroglyph right next to them. As opposed to features, there are artifacts. Artifacts are things that can't be moved. Can be moved, and they include metates and monos and arrowheads, hobby knives, all this kind of stuff. That move it, that's an artifact. This is a pink granite mono, and I love these things. I found like 6 or 7 of them. Some other people have found a few of them too. It'd be really neat to figure out, where did this pink granite come from? Where were these things manufactured? How were they brought into the monument area or to Prairie Mesa? It would make a neat story if we could figure it out. Arrowheads. Contrary to popular belief, you're not able to collect arrowheads. They're supposed to be left where they are. And all of these are exactly where they were. Some of them I found. I went back with a friend 8 years later and found some of them still sitting where they were originally. But one of them is right here in this building, I think, and being used as a demo. Pottery sherds. Again, we don't like to have these collected. Okay, we don't like to have them moved. They tell the archaeologists when they are in context, this is where they were dropped. We can figure out where they came from. We can maybe date this site properly. But it's really cool. If you look at the bottom 2 left pictures here, the center one in March of 2016, one of my hiking buddies came up to me and showed me these in their hand, and I took a picture of them. 18 months later, I was back going through the same area, and this other person came up, showed me 2 pottery sherds that they'd found. They were the same 2 that we'd found 18 months before. Okay, out of the middle of nowhere. That's a pot dust. Most all of the same pot is right there where it was dropped. It's rare that you can find something, that contained museum rock. People find sherds and they put them on a rock so that everybody else can see what they found. That's wrong. Again, you've taken them out of context. They should be back where they were lying on the ground originally. Again, these are sherds, they're not shards. Okay, a couple of my original hiking buddies stressed again and again, you don't call them shards. Shards are glass. Okay, sherds are pottery. Recorded grooved axes. You can find those up there. This is one of the nicer ones I found. But the archaeologist I had along with me the next time I went out there, I showed it to him and he says, that's not an axe, that's a hatchet. It's too small. Agave knives. The idea is that they would take these pieces of rock, maybe sharpen the edges a little bit, fasten them to a stick and use them to separate the agave leaves from the agave heart. And then they could bury the heart and cook it. Little carvings, you find those all over. The one on the left is maybe an earring. My hearing aids are getting to me. The one on the right is a pendant. And the one in the center is a plummet. Okay. Fields of flowers, they're all over up there. I'd love to go up there and see these things. Some yellow ones. Again, I'm not a botanist. I'm visually oriented. I'm not a scientist. So there are pink and yellow ones. I don't know what they are, but they're pink and yellow and they're pretty. And there's a bumblebee in the one on the left and a butterfly down on the one on the right. Reds and oranges and yellow. I do know the upper right one. It's an Indian paintbrush. I learned that in Boy Scouts. White and purple. Pink and bluish. Purplish and brownish. Again, you notice the scientific bent to my words. I can do that. Okay, rock art. What is petroglyph? The term petroglyph is something where they peck into the rock surface and exposes lighter material under the desert varnish. Pictograph is something that's painted onto the rock surface with these lines. Rock art terminology, there's animals, there's zoomorphs and quadrupeds, people, anthropomorphs or anthros. Patterns, there's plants, there's abstracts. Elements are a single rock art figure. A panel is a group of those elements on the face of a single boulder. Archaic petroglyphs are between 5500 BC to 200 BC. And historic petroglyphs are after the arrival of the Europeans. Style is a category of rock art based on association with a particular culture. So there are Western Desert Archaic, the oldest. There's Hohokam, Ancestral Pueblo, Sinagwan, etc. There's a tribe up there. There's probably a style that they placed. Where to look? First place you can go if you've never been up there, get off the Badger Springs exit and drive to the east of that road from I-17. And there's a trailhead, and you hike to the confluence of the river and the wash, which is about 0.8 of a mile to most. You look on the north side of the trail, and there are on that wall a bunch of petroglyphs, or out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, and I can't tell you how to get here. Okay, you need a Garmin with UTMs, and I'll take you right there. You can find them on rock ledges and cliffs, right in the middle of the road. Okay. You can't see it here, but when they got back in their Jeep, they had to drive down right over the top of where that boulder is because it was in the center of the road. Examples. Or sheep. It says there are no game, have not been any bighorn sheep up there. The petroglyphs and the remnants of the bones from some of the ones that were eaten or captured or whatever by prehistoric cultures prove them otherwise. They have been there in the past. Just made me laugh the first time I saw it. Here's this deer that looks like he's startled with this buzzsaw blade coming at him, you know, and I would be too. Bigfoot deer, big horns. And several deer here, and they both have similar horns drawn by the same person. This one cracks me up too. This is a sheep butting that rock on the left. And there's a smaller one off to his right. Christmas tree horns. This is what they call a big deer, like hollow sheep. These two are the ones that you'll see if you go to that badger springs point that I mentioned. And they got 4 legs and this great big long thing coming off of them, which, you know, looks like, oh shoot, I got a middle block. What's that animal that has the long tail? Something. Ringtail? Yeah, one of those, a ring-tailed one. Now that looks to me like a buffalo. Okay, and that's on the monument. We have no record of there being buffalo on the monument, but people on the monument may have been to places where there were buffalo. They have traded in stuff from buffaloes. So, you know, not saying a reason this could be one. Dog would circle in front of him. Big bird chasing a dog. A big bird. Another cartoon character. Anybody recognize what that one is? Okay. She mentioned the ducks. There's another duck, a deer and an anthro on the right. There's a debate as to whether or not it's a parrot or a swan. And basically, or a goose or something of that nature. I think it's a parrot because of the way the tails are drawn and very similar to other parrots you find in petroglyphs. Very modern looking stork. It might be historic petroglyphs, who knows? You know, those things that sit on your dashboard and go up and down, you know, and put their feet in the water. This is the what we refer to as the mystical lizard, and it you know, again has several different possibilities as to what it is. That looks to me like a tree frog. You sit on a piece of glass and look at him from underneath. That's what he'd look like. It's supposed to be a butterfly. I think it could also be a bat. It's supposed to show superimposition. The one on the bottom kind of overlaps a little bit of the one on the top that was decked individually. This is what we refer to as the obelisk. Okay. There's a little guy on the bottom, and then these 2 deer. The top one, his tail goes all around to the other side. And if you look on the right side of this obelisk, you know, I don't have a picture of it here, very hard to see, but there are lines drawn across it, and individually inside of each of those lines, there are what looks like letters in a foreign language. It almost looks like some of the Basque language. I don't know if it is or not. The pictures that we have and the people that have looked at it, none of us can figure it out at this point. The guy's got 4 arms. As referred to as the shaman. The alligator guy. This guy's fighting a rainbow. He's got a bow and arrow. There's a rainbow over a grinding slick. This one, I had my notes with me. They don't show on this particular version of the screen. It's referred to by the Havabai as one of their spiritual beings. That hair guy. Dancers. Spaceman. Take me to your leader. I referred to this one as Rising Spirits Boulder because all these things were seeming to come up out of the ground. Okay, but they're little crescent-headed guys. You can find them a lot of places around the monument. I don't know what the significance of them is. I know people that built them or made them are around to show us. I like this one because that figure in the upper left looks to me like it's a burden carrier, somebody carrying stuff. And you know, if you had a burden carrier come into your village, a guy from a distant area bringing in pots or whatever, that could be a significant thing that you might want to record. Patterns down by the river. This is again a panel with a lot of elements on it. My favorite panels. Big feet, big hands. This is the tall woman and a tall lady and her dog. And 6 or 7 miles away, I found another tall woman and her dog on the northern perimeter of the monument. These guys are done in reverse. They picked out everything except what they wanted to leave to show you as a figure. This one, it's a stretch a little bit to say that it's a shield. The shield petroglyph has a big circle with decorations or something in the middle. But here's this poorly drawn circle that has this guy in the middle with the body decorated. Whoever put that there was really, really brave because there's like a 70-foot drop off the side of that boulder. Stalks, dots, circles. They did some of them that were really, really neat. I wonder if they did them by tying a string to something and going around and around and around to get them to be that accurate. Square, concentric, not circles. Triangular, concentric. Hard to see, but it is a triangle. My favorites is this thing we call the whimsy rock. If you follow that concentric circle over on the far right side, okay, spiral, the line that comes out of the spiral then goes all around the top of this rock. That's one line on the top of that boulder. These maybe archaic, more guy up in Washington State that collected pictures of these kind of things that look like barbells. Died, his collection stagnated. Lots of circles or wagon wheels. Enclosed crosses. There's another one with a can't figure out the scratched area to the left. It's almost like maybe there was something there and they came along and removed it by scratching it out. Big one. Pupules. Again, no real idea what they might be. They could have been done just to create a sound by pounding on a rock in the same spot to communicate with somebody else. They could be, yeah, can't remember that term, but when they crunch up rock and then put it in their food and eat it. Some more with petroglyphs on the right. Bear paws, open clan symbols maybe. Another one, or a rain cloud if it's upside down. A neat one. This is near that other one that I told you is out in the middle of nowhere and you need GPS coordinates to find it. Along with this one. A bunch of them look like sunbursts. You look at all these little things running around this rock in the upper right-hand side, there's another sunburst. Looks like a soccer ball to me. In the middle of this, inward sunburst. This is, really wish I had my notes in here, but it's a 1056 supernova, supposedly. And about 4 or 5 feet away, there's another one very similar to it. Oh, back up. There's another view that I took with my large format camera and then developed it in my darkroom. And I kind of like that one. Pat myself on the back. Google Eyes. Or Google Eyes. Not sure what this one is, but I can imagine it being a representation of a bee. Ask shepherds were up there, obviously. And this guy, Jose Izzy Montoya from Las Vegas, New Mexico, was there in 1916. Tom Mayo, on his 1917 print over on Perry Mesa. A few years later, I found an identical one over on Black Mesa. Same handwriting and same year, but 2 months different. William H. Perry was a Mason. The use is named after him, and you can find his initials several different places. Just weird stuff. Neat patterns. Put on the left and something else over on the right, connected with dots in the middle. Kind of cool. I get in trouble for calling this one a fallen warrior, but he's got a shield. Head is over to the right, 2 legs over to the left. There's an arm that goes up over the top of the boulder and an arm that goes down to the bottom. And he was picked in that particular location. That rock hadn't been standing up, because there's petroglyphs on the right of it, which are oriented the right direction. You can find some of these same 4-starred things all across the Southwest. Blanket patterns, maybe, who knows? There's another one. Anyway, while you're up there, be safe. One thing you really need to take care of up there, If it help people out that are in trouble, gotten in trouble myself, you just have to really watch yourself. Take water, food, high clearance, a friend, leave notice where you are, where you're going. Know what your limitations are. My limitations today are much greater than they used to be. Additional sources of information. Go to aguafriafriends.org, and there are brochures on there that are all kinds of events and stuff listed in their calendar. Friends of Agua Fria National Monument on Facebook. You can go to verb.com, search their bookstore for Agua Fria. You'll come up with a book that was written by some of the people here in 2010 that worked in BLM. Also go into Amazon.com and look for books done by Michael J. Hoogendyk. The one of the Connie was just holding up. Will Russell and I edited it. There's 15 papers in it written by other people from that symposium that she mentioned. I took this picture by the way at 4:30 in the afternoon as I was heading back to my Jeep, and it was just so cool. It's also on the front of that book. So anyway.
Before we take questions, I just want to thank Connie and Mike so much for their time today. Connie for her, sharing the history of the monument, and Mike for sharing his wonderful photos from all of his years traipsing around the monument. And thank you also to the Friends of Agua Fria for getting us started, with the 25th anniversary celebrations. We will be hosting events, as James said, throughout the year. Future events will be posted on the website, which I have placed a link in the chat for those online. And I've also placed a link for the Friends of Agua Fria website that Mike just referenced. I tagged specifically the page where the brochures are. I encourage you to get out and explore the monument. You can go to some of the places that are referenced in the brochures. We encourage you also to explore the monument as a whole. We remind you to recreate responsibly, as Mike said, not only for yourself, but also for the preservation of the wonderful resources of the monument. On the Friends of Agua Fria website, they also have a brochure that goes over some site etiquette for visiting archaeological sites. So if you plan to go out, please take a look at that as well. And our next program that we have scheduled already will be next week. I'll be doing a program, Detectives of the Past, the Science of Archaeology, at the Sun City Library. They do have limited space, so they do ask that you sign up. That is on the link on the website. If you want to go there and figure out how you sign up, or you can talk to me after the program as well. But we can take questions from the in-person audience, and then I will also be monitoring the chat to see if folks online have questions. So thank you.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of your great information, a lot of you take my visual shots from looking down, like obviously from a drone or some type of aircraft. But I think you already answered my question. Are they legal or they're not legal on BLM land to use a drone? Would that be correct?
Yeah, there's a big discussion about it. She can answer it better probably than BLM's rules that are stopping some use of the drones.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to James since he's sitting in the back. James Holden is our field manager of the Hacienda field office.
Most of the drone limitations are based around fire needs. We don't do the commercial filming permits like we used to with drone use. And then drones used for the collection of data that is going to be used by the federal government need to be approved models. So when it comes to going out and doing survey and monitoring and stuff like that, we can't use drones that are produced overseas. They have to be domestically produced units. For personal use, we comply with the FAA requirements. And then additionally, if there's an active wildfire, please don't fly your drone near it.
Yeah, a lot of the shots, the aerial shots of some of the pueblos I showed, we actually had a volunteer when the monument was first established, a guy named Joe Vogel, who was a pilot out of Prescott. And his hobby was flying over and finding the sites and taking photos of them. And I know there was some newspaper did an article about him once, and they interviewed me, and I said something like, I don't even want to think about Joe, flying and taking photos of the sites at the same time, And of course, that's what they publish. If you're talking to the press, they're going to publish the stupidest thing you say. But we also had, though, a partnership with the Civil Air Patrol and during the early years of the monument, where their pilots would, just fly over the sites, and another way of monitoring them, but from the air, to see if they saw any suspicious activity or anything.
Like there's been a lot of fires on the Mesa top. I have two questions. I'll do them one at a time. So have you seen changes in the vegetation on say Black Mesa? I know you've been out there many years. Have you seen vegetative changes on the Mesa in your 20 or so years of being out there?
Yeah, without a doubt, after the fires go through, the first thing coming back are the grasses, the tall invasive kind of things like mustard grass even. And I've walked through some of those fields where they're over the top of my head and I can't see more than 4 or 5 feet either direction. All of that's invasive, and all of that's come since the fires have gone through. What's your second question?
After a fire, is that an opportunity to do archaeology?
Oh, without a
things that
doubt.
you
Yeah.
Previously couldn't see?
There was one fire that went through maybe 8 or 10 years ago. And we went out, part of the Cultural Resources Committee, maybe 5 or 6 vehicles full of people. And we found over a period of a couple of weeks, 100 brand new to us sites that we had never seen before. Some of them we had driven through the middle of, and the road would cut right through the center of a structure. And we had never realized it until after the fire. You can see this brown soil as far as you can see, and a round black circle here and a round black circle there. And each one of them are little field houses. So yeah, it really opens things up.
Yeah, there was a fire on Black Mesa about 20 years ago, and at the BLM we managed to get money to hire archaeologists to do a survey. And lots of times you get what they call a sample survey, where you survey a square here and a square there, or a straight line across the mesa. But they were able to survey like almost the entire northern part of Black Mesa, including 2 pueblos, and then that features like the racetrack at Badger Springs that really show up. And these fires in forests can really damage archaeological sites, but the grassland fires like on Perry Mesa they kind of, go through so quickly that we haven't really noticed any serious fire damage on petroglyphs or anything like that.
We've gotten before and after pictures of the same spot, and they don't look any, the glyphs themselves don't look any different.
Yeah, we've had some pink petroglyphs after they dumped fire retardant.
Person questions?
Yeah, I have one more. You made a few references to racetrack and explain the size of it. What is the function of racetrack?
Well, there's a traditions among many of the southwestern tribes used races as part of their ceremonies. And you find those features all over the Southwest. And I know I went to a ceremony once up on the Hopi Mesas. And at sunrise, all the young men would run up to the top of the mesa to start the ceremonies, you know, like running on a track. And that was really cool to see. But one kind of idea the archaeologists have is that since around 1300, you had a lot of people moving up onto the mesa from different areas. Some of them, you know, they probably moved up like one family after another, but the people in different villages might have come from different areas. In fact, one archaeologist said it might have been like Switzerland up there, you know, where you have like German, Italian, and French influences. They're all living together. And one idea is that they would have like large ceremonies involving feasts where everybody could get together and you know, make those social connections, and that the racetracks might have been part of that. One idea I had, I don't know if there's anything to this, but there have been ideas about many of the sites being defensive in nature, where the people built the sites so that they could be defended in case of an attack. And I've often wondered if some of the racetracks might have been like, that could have been the approved way to, you know, to approach a site. You know, like maybe they wouldn't shoot you with the bow and arrow if you were coming down the racetrack. But I don't know if there's anything to that though. But and it, you know, archaeologists, it's easy, it seems easy for archaeologists to say, oh yeah, it must be ceremonial, but it, you know, it's a larger thing than that, and just that it's part of this overall pattern that existed for hundreds of years among many tribes in the Southwest. It's really interesting, and still does, like with the Hopi ceremonies.
Another comparison that's made sometimes, the ball courts that the Hohokam had, okay? They use those not only just to play a game, but also as a gathering in social nature or marketing. They could sell stuff, you know, and everybody gathered together there to enjoy themselves and watch the games. That stops a little bit as you get north of Phoenix. And you run into these areas where the racetracks are. And then there's some more of the ball courts up further north. But in that particular area, the social events centered around the racetracks, not ball courts.
How would you explain that they've remained not grown over after all this time? I would think that it was clear that one time in the past that plants would have grown back into those spaces in intervening time.
Maybe it's because the soil was packed down so thoroughly. There, you know, something couldn't take root there as easy as it could off to either side, where the soil not packed down.
And some of them were ended up being used as roads too.
Yeah.
Like the path of the least resistance.
Sure.
Anyone else in the room? There's one question in the chat. Does Friends of Agua Fria National Monument or BLM ever sponsor hikes? And or is there a guide service you would recommend? Yes, BLM will be sponsoring some hikes, as I mentioned, through the course of the year as part of the 25th anniversary celebrations, and those will be posted on the website that I shared the link for. Friends of Agua Fria National Monument is also planning some of their own hikes and presentations throughout the year. I believe they're still working on finalizing some things, but those will also be shared on their website. And then if we can, BLM will also share those as well on the Agua Fria website. Some of those may be also for the celebrations for the 25th anniversary as well. And one of our biologists who is online But the bird walks will also be scheduled for later this spring. So if anyone is interested in that, keep an eye out on the website link.
Okay.
And there's the Black Canyon Heritage Park. One thing I failed to mention was, although the monument followed the idea that, there wouldn't be a visitor center built up there. The Black Canyon Heritage Park in Black Canyon City, which is like right in the heart of town, does have displays about the Agua Fria, and as well as some, a nice little park there and some interesting things. And they're going to have an event that the last Saturday, I think it's the 25th. It's called the Winter Fest, where there will be different community organizations, including the Friends of the Agua Fria, probably the BLM. And it's also like a book festival. So that's a place where you can get more information about, the general area around Black Canyon City and recreation opportunities.
Anyone else has any questions? I just want to again thank Connie and Mike for their time today, and check out future events on the website. We hope to see you somewhere down the road this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.